I was around 15 years old, and I was having a hard time connecting with people, and I was just kind of isolating myself, and my brother had recently moved to town. What I did was I kind of paid attention to what he was doing in his day-to-day, and he was spending most of his time at the boiler room, volunteering and playing music and drawing, just hanging out, connecting with people, which is what I was hungry for. I just kind of took myself to the boiler room one day, and I sat down on the couch and I watched people play music and draw, and somebody sat down next to me and they were like, "Hey, have you ever thought about volunteering at the boiler room?"
I started hearing about the boiler room when I was, I think, 13 or 14 years old, and it was pretty new, and there were some kids that I knew that hung out there, and so it was this like underground art, jazz, coffee, free soup kind of hangout spot, and it had kind of a weird reputation, which made it more attractive to me as a teen, and it was also like the only place that I knew of that teens were allowed to hang out.
In the summer between my freshman and sophomore year, I was hanging out at Kai Tai Lagoon Park with a bunch of hooligans, and this kid, Dusty Mankey, first day I met him, came down. He was staying with L. Beecham at the time and met me at the park and ride. And after about a 5-minute long conversation, that kid said, "You're my new best friend, we're going downtown." And I was really bored, so I said, "All right." And he did, in fact, proceed to be my new best friend. He got me volunteering at the boiler room, introduced me to the manager at the time, Aaron Howard, and introduced me to people there.
I mean, it was like the first time in my teenage years where I felt like I actually had a purpose or had something to connect to.
So before I started hanging out at the boiler room, like I was already hanging out in a public park all day, you know, so like most of what I was doing was just smoking pot and drinking 40s, like all day. Had already started getting involved with pills, some Adderall here and Ritalin there, you know.
And that's when I started going there. I was about 16 years old, and I had discovered drugs and alcohol, and the boiler room was a place that I could go and get in out of the cold, have a free bowl of soup, buy a cup of coffee, read a magazine, make some art.
The boiler room gave me a safe space. It was like that really comfortable couch at home that you never actually had, that you could just go and relax, and you didn't feel like anybody was going to judge you. And they had people there that were just incredibly supportive, and that's exactly what I needed. I needed like a warm space, a warm heart to help like warm my own.
When I got a tooth surgically removed and received a Vicodin prescription, that was when I realized my like affinity for opiates, and from like Vicodin, by the time I was 15, I had already started fucking around with oxycodone and morphine a little bit, and just like, I don't know, it wound up spiraling out of control to like a pretty intense degree for a bit there. I wound up actually in that time frame being 86 twice, and at first I was bitter about being 86 that time because I didn't see how I was in the wrong, but then I realized that it was probably just to like send a message to me that like, hey, you're fucking up. And I guess it worked. About 6 months after that ban lifted, I came back in, applied for the music and events coordinator job, wound up getting that and doing that.
The boiler room was a drug and alcohol free space, and that was really important to me. It wasn't a place where I could go and just be loaded on a couch and act all crazy. And also, it was expected that the people that were hanging out there weren't going to be drunk or high, and so if I wanted to hang out at the boiler room and get all the benefits, it kind of kept me in check and made me want to stay not loaded. And that was really good for me, because if there hadn't been a place for me to go and not be loaded, I would have just gone off the deep end, I think.
I realized as I was going through and training people how to make espresso, as I was growing up with the boiler room, it gave me the confidence to take those like people person skills that I was developing and bring them to another part of the town.
From there, it helped me get off probation, the contacts that I made there, and then like that job reference wound up getting me every job I've had since then, which has led to me working as a line cook at Docks, where I'm pretty well taken care of, make decent money there. It's helped me like get into the housing that I've gotten into. It like was where I hung out with my current long-term girlfriend initially, and it's generally been a very, very helpful place. It was like definitely instrumental also in getting me off of drugs. Like without that place, considering who I was hanging out with beforehand, that it made me a bit more distant too, and considering how hard they all fell into like methamphetamines and a bit of heroin, like my life, I might have recovered by now, but my life would have been significantly more fucked up.
When I was 16 years old, I started volunteering there. They had volunteer shifts that were about 4 hours long, and they started after school, so it was really great. I could go after school and work for like 3.5 or 4 hours and get a free cup of coffee and have something constructive to do for a few hours, which gave me something to do other than drugs. And that was so useful to me because drugs were really attractive, but so was a free cup of coffee and the fact that I could now put barista on my resume. I had a resume because of the boiler room. That was a really big deal.
Because I was so confident and comfortable at the boiler room, it gave me that confidence to ask for these opportunities at other places like Alchemy, like asking to work on the line for a little bit in the back and learn about food and preparing a plate and transferring that creativity that I saw happening at the boiler room into another outlet.
I still continue to work at the boiler room, even though I have my life pretty well together at this point, at least as well as you can at 20. But I still continue to work there because that place has helped me a lot, and I think that it needs to be open because someday down there, there's going to be another kid like me. There's going to be like some other 15-year-old just like already fucking around with drugs that he has no business touching, or she. And that place needs to be open as a place that they can be, that can help them and can teach them skills to get out of that.
I feel like there's a lot of people that don't have much forgiveness for the boiler room, which is kind of a shame. Like there are a lot of people that I've met that when I talk about the boiler room and how it helped me and it helped me like blossom into the person that I am today, and they're completely like they're appalled. Like they would have had no idea that somebody like me could have thrived so much from being a part of the boiler room.
I went to the dark side and I had my own problems with alcohol and drug addiction, and I spent a lot of time in my home alone doing drugs and feeling sorry for myself and on the verge of suicide and just being in a really, really dark place. But the one place that I went when I left my house was the boiler room, because I wanted to go there and see people, because when I went there and saw people, they welcomed me with open arms. They were super welcoming and non-judgmental and just took me at face value. I was allowed to be myself there. I didn't have to hide, my hair color or my tattoos or my sexuality or my politics or my spiritual side or anything. I mean, I could be whoever I wanted to be, and the most negative reaction I ever got was, wow, that's weird. I don't think I could live like that. People come there really just to learn how to be around each other and learn how to be humans together. And I love that about that place. It's so special.